Welcome to The Topic, where we highlight Houston Community College, our students, our programs, and our reach into the community. I'm Todd Duplantis. Thanks for joining us late this Tuesday afternoon. We're usually on at 1 o'clock. Today, we're on at 4 o'clock, and we're on every Tuesday here on Facebook and YouTube. You can also catch our show on HCC TV. Check your cable provider for that. And you can follow us in social media under Houston Community College District. Also, if you're into podcasts, make sure you download our podcasts at hccs.edu/podcast. You know, the spring 2022 semester is underway, but COVID remains an issue with the Omicron variant. We're moving into a new phase of the pandemic, which calls for new responses. Joining me this afternoon is Dr. Kurt Ewen, Vice Chancellor of Strategic Planning and Institutional Effectiveness. Also, Dr. Norma Perez, Vice Chancellor for Instructional Services and Chief Academic Officer, and Robert McCracken, Executive Director of Risk Management. Thank you all for being here to bring us up to date. I know, I'll start with you, Dr. Ewen. Decision was made around New Year's Eve to more or less change the operations of HCC because of the Omicron variant. Maybe you can take us back to that time, the decision that was made, and then we'll get an update on where we are today.
Thank you, Todd, and Happy New Year to you and your family and everyone. So, as we were coming out of the break, it was clear that the Omicron variant was taking its toll, and we were watching that on the news. And the Executive Council came together, and we decided that based on what the numbers were showing, that it was prudent of us to pull back, like we had done several times before, to pull back and to go partially virtual at the beginning of the spring term in mid-January. We did that, and that has all worked out really well. Everybody was virtual online on a schedule, essentially, or virtual online web enhanced courses. Except for our workforce programs. We've continued to watch the data, and as Omicron has done in other parts of the world, there was a peak, and then not long after the peak, there was a fairly fast decline in the spread. And that's what the data here in Houston is showing. And so we made the decision last night, the Executive Council, to reopen everything in person effective Monday, the 31st of January.
And Bob, I want to bring you into the conversation. What does that mean to our students? As Dr. Ewen was saying, a lot of the workforce courses, realistically, even during the pandemic, had been meeting in person very safely, social distancing. But what does it mean to the student who may have been taking the English class online? Will they be going back to campus? And we're going to bring in Dr. Perez in a second and talk more about students. But maybe right off the top, maybe you can tell us what that means to our students.
Yeah, so the students had the option that when they were registering for classes, they could sign up for the online classes, they could sign up for in-person classes. And when we saw the numbers getting worse in early January, and we moved those students who were in a lot of those in-person classes temporarily online. And essentially what it means is starting on the 31st, they'll be able to come back, attend their classes in person, which is what they had signed up for initially. And so they'll be able to do that. For the workforce students and the lab-based courses that had been meeting in person anyway, there's really no change from that. And then you'll also see a little bit an increase in the amount of on-campus student support services that are available to the students when they come back on the 31st.
Dr. Perez, I know our students are very resilient, same with our faculty as well. When you had heard that Omicron was rising over the holidays, did you get that flash in your mind thinking, oh boy, here we go again? I think your mic is off. We can get you to unmute your mic.
As a matter of fact, Todd, I did. I think that I was prepared to everything start as normal as possible, which was to have all of our students on campus. And unfortunately, that is not what happened. As Dr. Ewen indicated, he called a meeting of the council. And during the break, actually, before classes, before we resumed back on campus in January, at that point, the data was presented We looked at that data. We saw how things weren't getting any better. And so the decision was made collectively to let's have some of our in-person classes report to online on a schedule so that they can go ahead and have their classes and limit the in-person classes at that time.
Dr. Ewen, maybe you can talk about the decision process in something like this. It's not taken lightly, and I know there are a lot of people involved in making this type of decision. What was the thought process that went before the announcement was made on New Year's Eve?
So going all the way back to March of 2020, we were explicit about the fact that our number one priority was to ensure the safety of our students, faculty, and staff. And that has continued to be our guiding principle, and that we would follow the data and allow the data to inform our decisions. And so that's essentially what we did. Luckily, we've been through this rodeo several times now, and we know what to do. And so the pullback was pretty quick. Faculty are ready to go. They know what to do there. We have the Zoom lobby set up for students, so registration and those kinds of things can continue. So we were ready, and it's just a matter of pulling the trigger. A lot of people weren't happy about it. The other part of this, Todd, I have to say, is that the number of our employees, students, and staff who were getting sick really rose very quickly.
Yeah.
So we had several locations that even in December that were essentially shut down for a period of time because a number of the staff had gotten COVID or had been sick in general. And so, you know, you can only spread people so thin that we're also very concerned about the long-term effects of all of the strain of the last 2 years on our employees.
Bob, what's it going to look like for the faculty and staff going back to campus? I know at times we had screening. Now it looks like there is a short question that you're asked to answer yourself, but you won't be going through the temperature taking and screening process. But students are being asked to, and faculty are being asked to at least social distance and possibly wear a mask as well.
Right. So, you know, we're really moving to a self-reporting model. So we enhance the systems for our employees to self-report. We have in place a system for faculty to report when the students are letting them know I won't be in class because I have symptoms or something along those lines. I've had close contact. And then there's a system for the students to self-report as well. And then they go to contacted by a call center, and we kind of process the information, determine when they can return to class, and that, or if they're an employee, when they can return to work. And that helps, in particular, it helps the students, you know, communicate with the faculty member, make sure that they're being proactive, help them negotiate with faculty member changing of assignments or whatever may need to happen on that side. But we're not doing the at-the-door screening anymore. You know, we eliminated the temperature taking at the doors a long time ago. You know, it proved to be ineffective. And just with the volume that we've seen, the at-the-door screening, you know, has the impact, if you have a lot of people coming on campus, of bunching everybody up, kind of at a choke point when you're trying to really keep people spread apart. And so it just didn't make sense to continue to do that at-the-door screening. And so, you know, the students and the employees, they get the questions. Those questions will change as the circumstances change. But right now we're asking people to let us know if they've had close contact with somebody who has COVID, if they have symptoms of COVID, or if they've tested positive for COVID. And if any of those are the case, we ask them not to come to campus, notify their supervisor if they're an employee, notify their faculty member if they're a student, and then make contact with the appropriate call center, and we can determine how quickly we can get them back onto campus.
We are talking about returning to our campuses with in-person classes end of this month for HCC. We'll give you another update in just a few moments. When we come back, we'll talk about student services. We'll also talk about the students themselves and our faculty. How are they faring through this all? All that and more when the topic returns in about 60 seconds.
Sometimes what you need just shows up. Houston Community College has your back. Whether you're knocking out some basics or upping your game for a better job, enroll today for spring classes and frame your future with HCC.
For more than a year, we have kept you informed with more than 500 remote episodes. But now we're back, bigger and better with more news and more guests. Join us live every weekday at 10 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube, and on HCC TV at noon and 5 p.m. You can watch from anywhere. We go where you go.
Welcome back to the topic on this Tuesday afternoon. I'm Todd Duplantis. Thank you for watching us live on Facebook and YouTube. You can also catch the rebroadcast of the show on HCC TV. Look for us in social media under Houston Community College District. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're talking about COVID response, getting back to our campuses with in-person classes for HCC. Of course, Omicron changed that back around New Year's Eve. We've had a lot of classes online. Now the announcement's been made today that we are moving forward back in the buildings with all of our classes at the end of the month. We're joined live this afternoon by Dr. Ewen, Vice Chancellor of Strategic Planning and Institutional Effectiveness. Also, Dr. Norma Perez, Vice Chancellor for Instructional Services and Chief Academic Officer, and Robert McCracken, Executive Director of Risk Management. And we're talking about spring 2022. Dr. Ewen, I'll go back to you before I get to Dr. Perez. I have a number of questions about students and faculty, but student services have always been available to our students online and in many cases in person. Will the online aspect continue in some fashion as we reopen our buildings for all of our classes?
We've discovered a variety of new normals, right? And one of the new normals that we will see as a result of our COVID years is a heavy reliance on virtual opportunities for students to engage with us. So those will continue. Our Zoom lobbies will continue. There will be now, after the 31st, there'll be more people back on campus, but there'll also be dedicated staff monitoring the Zoom lobbies so that students, if they don't want to come in, they can always just go straight there. So yes.
Dr. Perez, I want to bring you back into the conversation. Speaking of the new normal, do you have a lot of students and faculty that do prefer the hybrid or having a virtual option? And do you see those continuing in high fashion as well?
Well, all of our students have their preferences. We have a large number of students that want to be face-to-face. And then, of course, many of our students discovered that by going online, that they actually did like going online. And so we have that new interested students signing up for online classes as well. Our faculty, of course, are accustomed to teaching both. Some of our faculty had to make some big adjustments to teach online and are still learning as they learn to develop their courses, making them much more engaging for our students so that they definitely are learning their student learning outcomes. But overall, I think that we're finding that our students, it's both. We're looking at the hybrid, we're looking at the online on a schedule. It seems to be a little bit more popular than online anytime. And so, again, we continue to look at the modalities and we will continue to offer the modalities that we're currently offering today.
Let me ask you this question, Dr. Perez, and it may be out of left field, but I'm going back to what Bob McCracken was telling us earlier about if you're feeling sick, having symptoms, or tested positive, you need to stay home. But there may be students who are asymptomatic and they're testing positive, they feel fine, but they're staying home. Will they have an online option where they can continue their classwork even though they may not be able to make it in person?
But that's one of the unique things that we learned through this whole COVID situation, and that is that all of our classes now have a Canvas presence. So that if that happens with a particular student, they're able to continue with their assignments, whatever is required for that particular day. And so our faculty have become very accustomed to trying to work with our students based on the situation that the student presents to them, and of course presents that to them in a timely manner. And so I think that that's worked out quite well in having both the online as well as in-person classes.
I know our students have proved very resilient over the last couple of years. And before Omicron hit, we actually had an in-person graduation ceremony. And a lot of students who hadn't had a chance to do that or finally were getting a chance to walk across that stage. Did you notice anything different from those students? You know, maybe relief that they could walk in person, see their friends, see their classmates walking across that stage? Because we had to do it virtually for a couple of years.
That is correct. We had our very first in-person graduation back in December, and I can tell you that students were very, very excited. They welcomed that opportunity to come back and actually walk across the stage, and of course, many of their family members were present. So we're looking forward to having another in-person graduation come May, and I think that this one we'll find is going to be much larger than what we saw in December.
Oh, yeah, I imagine it would be. Speaking of the faculty, you mentioned earlier they're accustomed to going online. When we got the news on New Year's Eve that things were going to be going online, were they able to pivot right away with their instruction plan, even if they were having the in-person classes and instruct the classes remotely?
Yes, they were. But just like our students wanting to be in person or face-to-face, in person, we had some of our faculty also wanted to be face-to-face. They did not want to have to start online. And unfortunately, they had to adjust to that as well. And they did. Having done this already for almost 2 years, they're pretty much accustomed now to being very flexible in terms of moving from one modality to the other.
With the students, have you noticed over the last year and a half, has there been a need for more tutoring because classes have been online primarily or maybe in hybrid? Have you noticed a rise in tutoring or people reaching out to say, you know what, I need a little bit of extra help in this course?
We have seen a slight rise on that. Again, when we do tutoring, for the first 2 weeks, of course, we did it virtually. But beginning January the 31st, we're going to begin to offer them again in person as well as virtually. And we found again that, as Dr. Ewen explained about student services, many of our students, it's much easier for them to contact a tutor virtually than it is to come into a tutoring center to receive the services. So again, students are taking advantage of whether it's in person or whether it's virtual. We are providing the resources that they need to help them be successful.
We're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and take a short break, because when we come back, I want to talk more with Bob about what HCC is asking everyone to do. The SOAR Safe Pledge. The Chancellor asked a couple of months ago, put that out there. We're going to talk more about that. We're going to talk about the big picture and what happens if there's another variant. We know they're out there. If another one pops up, what do we do then? We'll talk about all that and more coming up on the topic. We'll be back in about 60 seconds.
Sometimes what you need just shows up. Houston Community College has your back, whether you're knocking out some basics or upping your game for a better job. Enroll today for spring classes and frame your future with HCC.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
Things could be stranger, but I don't know how. I'm going through changes, through all of the strangeness. I'm going through changes now.
Welcome back to The Topic. Thank you for watching us on Facebook Live and YouTube. Look for us on HCC TV. You can check your cable provider for that. Follow us in social media as Houston Community College District. Make sure you also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We made a big announcement at the beginning of this program. First off, I want to introduce my guests. I've got two vice chancellors joining me, Dr. Kurt Ewen and also Dr. Norma Perez. And we also got Bob McCracken, who is our Executive Director of Risk Management. We're talking about spring 2022. I want to bring Dr. Ewen on back once again, real quickly, because Dr. Ewen, you had a big announcement at the beginning of the show. I want to repeat it again for people who may have not caught the beginning of the show, but maybe you can tell them where we are today with COVID and getting back to in-person classes at HCC.
Right. Thanks, Todd. So the Omicron virus has, as we anticipated, or we're hoping at least, that the infection rate has dropped dramatically here in the Houston area. And so we will then be returning fully to campus on Monday, January 31st for classes and for student services. Employees should always consult with their supervisor as to whether or not they are needed back on campus or not, because that still varies depending upon their department.
Right. Okay. Bob, I want to bring you in. At the top of the show, Dr. Ewen said one of the things the COVID task force did was look at the numbers in Harris County. Now, I know a couple of weeks ago, the threat level was raised to red, but it appears from what Dr. Ewen was saying, the numbers seem to be dropping in Harris County. Is that one of the decisions or one of the factors that went into this decision?
Yeah, absolutely. So in early January, late December, when we were looking, you could see that the numbers of cases were rising. And, we use data from Harris County, Fort Bend County, City of Houston, and then Southeast Texas Regional Advisory Council, or SET-TRAC. And we're looking at all that data to see what's going on in the community, because as we know, what's happening with our faculty and students is mirroring what we see happening in the community. And in late December, early January, we knew the numbers were going up and that they would continue to go up. And at the time, the experts were projecting that it would really peak sometime in January. And that's really what we've seen when we're looking at the data. It looks like we probably peaked a little over a week ago. We've seen a really steep drop off in the number of new cases daily. We've seen first a flattening and now a decline in the number of hospitalizations locally. We're seeing a decline in the positivity rate. And so from the community perspective, while there's still a lot of COVID cases happening, there's fewer today than there were yesterday, and it looks like there'll be far fewer, a week from now than there are today. And so, we have to plan ahead a little bit. And so that's really what we're looking at, what we're seeing. And we're monitoring that all of the time. So, hopefully there are no new variants, but, we're keeping our eye out.
I want to get to the new variants in a second, but I know the Chancellor had mentioned something a few months ago about a HCC SOAR Safe pledge. Maybe you can tell us about that, and it's meant to keep us all safe.
Sure. The SOAR Safe pledge it's very simple, and it's the things that we can each do individually to help ourselves. But if we're all doing them, it also helps everybody. And they're very basic. Wash your hands, wear a mask, watch your distance, stay home if you're sick. And then get vaccinated, and that's really it. And if you do those things and you're taking care of yourself, you're minimizing the risk that you'll have serious complications, and at the same time you're minimizing the risk to everybody else in the community. And so we just ask everybody to do those things, take those actions. We don't mandate it, but we do encourage it.
Dr. Ewen, I want to talk about the big picture here, because there could be some other variants. It seems logical. We could get another variant that could spike cases. How is the college prepared moving forward with this to pivot our operations?
Well, I think more importantly, we are better prepared to pivot in general. We had to pivot during Harvey. We had to pivot during the last winter's freeze. We had to pivot again with COVID, repeatedly pivoting here and there, always having to change plans that we had made. And I think that will have a long-term benefit for us as an institution. Part of our job as a community college is to be as responsive to the needs of our community as possible. We have traditionally not been that good at that. And oftentimes what our students need and our community needs from us is for our ability to respond more quickly to need. And I think this will bode well for us in the future.
Dr. Perez, from what you're hearing from the faculty, they were able to pivot their instruction a few weeks back. They've got to be looking at this realistically as we move forward as well, that things could change really, like it did. It could change in a matter of weeks. We could be back to doing things remotely again. The faculty prepared for that, from what you can tell?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I just had a meeting with a group of faculty earlier prior to this session, and that was one of the questions. You know, are we going, or can we expect to have to go back to online instruction? And the response is, you know, we don't know. This COVID continues to be fluid. And for now, we're going to be back on campus. And in the future, again, based on what we find, what we see, what the data shows, we may be making a decision to go back to online. But for now, they're prepared to go back on campus and continue to provide their instruction as they had initially planned for the start of the semester.
Bob McCracken, Bob, are we living in the new normal where at least life could be, new variants come out, we go online, we go back? I mean, could this be the way life is for the next couple of years?
I would hope not, but you know, the truth is, I don't think we know. You know, people are very hopeful. I'm very hopeful that Omicron is the last major wave and the last major disruptive impact. But if we've learned anything over the last couple of years, it's that COVID doesn't kind of agree with, you know, what we would like. And we keep getting thrown curveballs. I mean, it wasn't very many months ago that we were feeling pretty good that we were past the Delta wave locally. And that was the last major wave we were going to face. And then, you know, kind of out of nowhere, suddenly in December, we had the Omicron coming. And so we hope that we can continue with some modifications occasionally without major disruptions, but we really don't know. We're just going to have to, as Dr. Ewen said, keep watching the data and responding appropriately.
And Dr. Ewen, I'll bring you in for a final question. COVID task force, it's not going anywhere anytime soon, is it?
It's not, no. I think our work continues. We now have the COVID task force has become part of an operational briefing that we have 2 days a week, where we bring together today, there were 65 people on the call, walking through all of the relevant details about the things going on at HCC and how we can respond so that there is broader awareness of what's going on, whether it's COVID related or not, but COVID continues to run deep within most of the conversations. And the Executive Council has relinquished some of its operational concerns to that group and is now able to focus a little bit more on strategy. So I think we've learned a lot in all of this, but it isn't going anywhere anytime soon, no.
Dr. Ewen, Bob McCracken, Dr. Perez, thank you all for joining me this afternoon. You do great work, and we appreciate all you do with keeping our students in line and online and learning and keeping us all safe. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for joining us on The Topic. We're live every Tuesday afternoon. I'm Todd Duplantis. We'll see you again next week.